Hello, my name is Gretchen, and unlike most of my peers here today, I am not in the medical field. Rather, I am a civil engineer studying transportation. Today, I'll be telling you a little bit about some of my research performed in my hometown of Houston, Texas, looking at whether volunteer-based food delivery programs are an effective way of targeting and hopefully reducing hunger. Think Uber Eats, but for food banks. Throughout time and continuing today, hunger is one of the biggest issues facing humanity. Every single day, 828 million people worldwide don't know where their next meal is coming from. In the United States, 13.5 million families went hungry in 2021, and in Houston, where this research took place, over 1 million people go hungry every day. These numbers are staggering and can feel overwhelming. How can you start to solve a problem when it's so big and affects so many people? My research focuses on tangible outcomes to tangible problems. And so to help make this a little more tangible to you all, we're going to take a trip to Houston. So this is the city of Houston, and every single shaded area on this map is a neighborhood where every single person lives further than half a mile from the nearest food store. We're going to be traveling with a family that lives on the south side of Houston. You can see their house up there as they try to get groceries for the week. Our family doesn't have a car, but luckily, in a city as notorious for poor public transit coverage as Houston, they only live half a mile from the nearest bus stop. Even so, it will take half an hour and 2 bus transfers to access the nearest food store 2.5 miles away. And when they get there, it's not a grocery store at all. It's just a convenience store. And the convenience store, we don't think has very much access to produce. This is the only picture of food advertised on their website or their Google page. And while no produce is mentioned in any of the reviews, every single one mentions beer. So this might not be the best place to feed a growing family nutritional and healthy food. And now we're going to pile on. What happens when a hurricane hits? The location of this family wasn't chosen at random. It was around the corner from where this photo was taken in 2020 following Hurricane Laura in Houston. What happens when an ice storm hits the city? People aren't able to leave their homes, and grocery stores aren't able to restock due to frozen roadways. What happens when there's a worldwide global pandemic? A family member might fall sick, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks, but you can't afford to stock up groceries for those 2 weeks of time. What happens when the same worldwide global pandemic creates supply chain shortages and grocery stores can't restock of affordable food options that low-income families are able to purchase? You can see how easy it is to start to get trapped in this cycle of hunger. But I don't say this today to make you feel overwhelmed or helpless. These are the problems that my research seeks to address. And I did so by partnering with Crowdsource Rescue, a nonprofit based in Houston that does spontaneous volunteer matching. This is where the Uber Eats metaphor comes in. They match somebody who needs help with somebody who is willing and able to deliver food from a food bank to their home. Crowdsource Rescue provided me with 2 years of request data that was anonymized, and we saw about 42 requests per day in that time. What did I want to do with this data, right? I know who's requesting. So I approached this problem like we approach many problems in our everyday life by asking the questions of who, what, when, where, and why. We know the what in this case. It's hunger, food insecurity. And what we're trying to figure out is the why. Why are people hungry? Are there clear patterns here that can help us to better target this hunger? And to do so, I looked at who is making requests, where from, and when. I looked at these questions by creating computer models that analyze the intersection between identity, where you live, meaning is your area low income, do you live in a floodplain, and when you made the request. What was happening in the world? What was happening with COVID, with the economy, or with general disaster events? I found several patterns, but the most striking of them you can see even without a fancy computer model. You can tell just by looking at a map. This map shows need requests in Houston in a typical 2-week period, or at least as typical as time could get during the pandemic. You can see that need here is really concentrated in the low access areas that we discussed before. However, this is the week after Winter Storm Uri that we saw a photo of before. It's a striking difference. You can tell that need has unilaterally spread through these low access areas and even overflowed from the low access areas. And I classify these 2 different types of requests and of need as chronic stressors versus acute shock. Chronic stressors are the factors that affect low-income and vulnerable populations day in and day out and affect their ability to access food, such as not having access to open grocery stores or not having access to a vehicle in a city as car-centric as Houston. Whereas acute shock are these external events that happen and affect everybody, but especially those that are coming from a lower starting point, such as hurricanes, the pandemic, or again, economic conditions. So great, now we know these patterns of need, but what can we do to improve programs? In my future research, I hope to expand and create better prepared programs. By understanding patterns of need, we're able to create other programs such as crowdsourced rescue. If you're not familiar with food banks, you might not be aware that this is a really novel way of thinking about food aid. Many food banks might have small local distribution programs, but a city-wide food delivery program is rare. And so by showing the success of crowdsourced rescue, I hope to inspire other such organizations. Secondly, I want to work on preparation. I'd like to create predictive models that can help proactively deploy assistance to these low-income and low-access areas so that people can receive assistance before the burden of request is put on those who need it most. Ultimately, in the 2 years of data that I had, crowdsourced rescue provided 30,000 meals to families in need. But if we can create proactive models, how many more people can we help? How can we help this million? And if this works in Houston, who's to say it won't work elsewhere? Ultimately, I want to target this 828 million number, because if we can help just one more person know where their next meal is coming from, I think that's a step in the right direction. Thank you so much.